You're well. And also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today we'll be doing our grade 8 English lesson on hyphens. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once we've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of English Language Arts, grade 8. And then we're going to scroll down up until we get to our chapter of hyphens. All right, so our chapter is hyphens. Our subject is English Language Arts. Grade 8. And the lessons that we are going to be focusing on today under the chapter of hyphens is to use hyphens in compound adjectives. All right. So when it comes to hyphens, right? It says a compound adjective is an adjective made of more than one word. And in general, right, we use a hyphen to join the words of a compound adjective, especially when the adjective could be misread without a hyphen. And once again, we can say that a compound adjective, right? And when you think of compound, you think of more than one, right? So compound adjective is an adjective that is made up of more than one word. And we use a hyphen to join the words of a compound adjective, especially when the adjective could be misread without a hyphen. All right, and if we look at an example, right, it says a full time job. That basically describes the job. And if we look at that compound adjective, right, to describe what type of job it is, and then we say it is a full time job, and a hyphen is then basically a hyphen is there in the middle to join that two compound adjectives. The same with that well known actor. And well known is the hyphen is used to basically join the two words. And then we also have my 2-year-old cousin because it puts emphasis on the age of the cousin. And then an open ended question, an ES fitting scream, and an open and shut case. And we do not use a hyphen when the compound adjective comes after a noun or a pronoun that it modifies, or when the first word of the compound is an adverb ending in ly. So we say that we use we do not use hyphens when the compound adjective comes after the noun. or a pronoun that it modifies, or when the first word of the compound ends in ly. And if we look at the examples, right, it says the actor is well known. Especially if we say a well known actor, that basically refers to the actor being well known, right? Or my cousin is 2 years old, or freshly washed sheets, a barely visible star, which means that basically shows that the hyphen does not come after the noun, right? So if it the hyphen so if the let's say the words comes after the noun, right, then we do not add the hyphen. We do not add the hyphen, and there we have an example that says the actor is well known. But if we add the hyphen before the noun or before the verb or something, and then we add the hyphen. And we made an example of the words that comes after a noun, right? The compound adjectives that comes after a noun. And it says, note that the adjacent adjectives are only considered a compound if the first adjective describes the second adjective rather than the noun. And if we look at when it says that the adjacent adjectives are only considered a compound if the first adjective describes the second adjective rather than the noun. Like, for example, an expensive a new desk. And we also have an expensive looking desk. And then lastly, we can say that in the first example, the desk is expensive and it's new. And the second example, it is the desk isn't that expensive, but it looks expensive. Right? So when it comes to hyphens, right, we see that hyphens, it basically, like they say with the compound adjective, right, it is an adjective that is made up of more than one word, and we use a hyphen to join the word. So we use a hyphen to join words on a compound adjective, of a compound adjective, especially when the adjective could be misread without a hyphen. right? And we made a few examples of how to identify hyphens within that sentence. All right, so now let's go to a+students.ca, where we are going to be doing our tutorial as well as our test. And we said that when it comes to hyphens, right, we said that a compound adjective is an adjective that is made up of more than one word. We can use a hyphen to join the words of a compound adjective, especially when the adjective could be misread without a hyphen. And we made an example of compound adjectives, right? Where we say that we add a hyphen to join the words of a compound adjective, especially when the adjective could be misread without the hyphen. Because sometimes if we don't add the hyphen, like we say, then the sentence will be misread. We won't know if it's more than one adjective, what is actually um, joined within that sentence, right? Or what is actually being described within that sentence. All right, then if we look at our sentence, right, it says, add hyphens to compound adjectives where necessary. If no hyphens are needed, submit the text without making any changes. So it says, in William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, Juliet's chatty, long winded nurse serves as her confidant. And if we look at that sentence, right, it says, in William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, Juliet's chatty, long winded nurse serves as a confidant. And if we want to describe using the compound adjective, right, we want to describe the nurse, and then we can say, we can identify long winded. And we can then add our apostrophe within, or let's say between the two words. Because long winded is a compound adjective and it comes before a noun that it modifies, which is nurse. So it means that we need to add a hyphen. So long winded, especially with our apostrophe in the middle of long and winded, right? That is our compound adjective. And we see that it comes for a noun, which is nurse, that we have modified. And that is why we added our apostrophe. All right, we need to add hyphens, right? It says the world class aquarium in Monterey, California is known for its interactive displays, research facilities, and pioneering work with jellyfish. So it says that the world class aquarium in Monterey, California is known for its interactive displays, research facilities, and pioneering work with Chile. And if we were to identify our compound adjective, it will be world class. And it comes before our noun, which is aquarium. So which means that we're going to have to add our hyphen in between world and class because it describes, both of them describes the aquarium. So world class, and it comes before a noun that is our compound adjective. So world class, it modifies the noun, right? And we then have to add an apostrophe in between world and class. And then we have the last one that says, after a heavy downpour, some residents had to contend with knee deep water in their basements. So it says after a heavy downpour, some residents had to contend with knee-deep water in the basements. And if we were to identify our compound adjective within the sentence, and if we look at the word that needs a hyphen, right, it says it is knee deep because knee deep describes the noun, right? And we put our apostrophe over there. So it means that after a heavy downpour, some residents have to contend with knee deep water in their basement. So, knee deep, we put the hyphen in between knee and deep, and that modifies the noun. All right, so now we're going on to our test where we are going to use hyphens within compound adjectives, right? All right, so we're going on to our test where we are going to use hyphens in the compound adjective. It says, is loam a type of soil that contains clay, silt, and sand, is popular for its moisture retaining properties. So we see that loam, a type of soil that contains clay, silt, and sand, is popular for its moisture retaining properties. And if we were to identify which option has the apostrophe, the hyphen, and if we were to identify where our hyphen needs to go, then we can say it is option one because it is by the most popular is the moisture retaining property. So moisture retaining, that is where we need to add our hyphen, moisture retaining, which is option one. And the next one says, spring brought warmer days, blossoming trees, and the long awaited farmers market, which featured seasoned produce, asparagus, strawberries, and peas. And if we were to identify to add our hyphens, right? Is it option one or option two? And we will go with option one because it says spring brought warmer days, blossoming trees, and the long awaited farmers market, which featured seasonal produce, asparagus, strawberries, and peas. All right, so we are choosing option one by long awaited farmers market. So long awaited, that is where we added the hyphen. In William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, Juliet's chatty, long winded nurse serves as a confidant. So we need to select the hyphen that best states the compound adjective. And in William Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet, Juliet's chatty, long windedness serves as her confidant. It's like somebody that she can talk to, somebody she can overload to, somebody that will listen without judgment. And if we choose option one, option two, we'll go with option one because we added the apostrophe by long, chatty, long-windedness. All right. And it says that the body temperature of warm-blooded animals, such as mammals and birds, they typically remain constant despite changes in the surrounding environment. So the body temperature of warm-blooded animals, such as mammals and birds, typically remain constant despite changes in the surroundings or the surrounding area, the surrounding environment. And that one, if we choose the it says the body temperature of warm-blooded animals. So we will choose warm-blooded animals, which is the first option where we are going to describe the animal. So the compound adjective is warm-blooded, describing the animal, and that comes before the noun. And if we choose another one, it says after a heavy downpour, some residents had to contend with knee deep water in the basement. And if we were to identify the compound adjective, remember it's a compound adjective, right? It is two words that is joined by a hyphen, and it basically describes our noun, right? It's like two words or sometimes three words that describes our noun. So if we were to describe, let's say, for example, in this sentence, basements, right? Not even basements, water, for example, and then we will say knee deep, right? Because that basically shows us how, can we say how much water or the extent of the heavy downpour in the basement, right? The amount of water that got into the basement. So the water was so much that the residents had to be content with the knee deep water in the basement, which means that that was basically a storm. So we then added the hyphen between knee and deep, describing or telling us more about the water. All right. Sorry. It says, chocolate covered fruit is my guilty pleasure. Ben confessed. It doesn't matter if it's a fresh strawberry or a piece of dried mango. I just can't resist. So, chocolate covered fruit is my guilty pleasure, Ben confessed. It doesn't matter if it's a strawberry, a fresh strawberry, or a piece of dried mango. I just can't resist. So, we now need to add the hyphen to a compound adjective when necessary, right? And if we were to identify or to add our hyphens, right, we would put our hyphen by the two words that would describe fruit. And the fruit is being described as it is chocolate covered. So it's not just any fruit, but it's like a chocolate covered fruit that is the guilty pleasure. So, which means that we will go with option one, because that basically tells us more or it describes basically the fruit or the noun. Remember, they said that if our, let's say, our compound adjective is before the noun, right, and then we add the hyphen. But if our, let's say, the adjectives are after our noun, and then we do not add the adverbs, but in the hyphens, sorry. So in this case, since chocolate covered comes before fruit, right, before the noun, we will then say chocolate covered is our compound adjective where our hyphen, we need to basically hyphenate that in order to show that it describes fruit, right? Chocolate covered fruit. All right, let's do the last one. It says, if you feel dizzy while exercising in the heat, retire to a cool area such as an air conditioned building and drink plenty of water. So we now need to either add hyphens or add a hyphen to a compound adjective within the sentence, right? So we need to say if it's option one or option two. Option one has the hyphen by air conditioned, and then option two has got no hyphen, right? And remember, we need to add a hyphen to our compound adjective that will tell us more about our noun, and it also needs to be before the noun. So it says once again, if you feel dizzy while exercising in the heat, retire to a cool area, like go to a cool area, such as an air conditioned building. And there we are describing the building. What type of building do you need to go to when you are exercising in the heat? An air conditioned building. It tells us more about the building being the noun, and our compound adjective that is in front of the noun, right? That tells us more about the noun is a conditioned, because it tells us what type of building we need to go to, right? And a conditioned is correct. All right. And that is now the end of our lesson on hyphens, right? And we see that we use hyphens in compound adjectives. And when we use hyphen in compound adjectives, right, it is compound adjectives is made up of an adjective that has more than one word, right? It's like we use these two words to describe a noun. And these words, right, we use a hyphen between those two words to join the words of a compound adjective, especially when the adjective could be misread without a hyphen, right? And that was what we did. And also we said that a compound adjective, right, needs to come before an noun in order for us to add the hyphen, right? Hyphens is just there to basically eliminate the confusion of the emphasis of the word or the noun that we are putting on, right? So that is the end of our lesson on hyphens. Thank you very much, grade 8s, for joining the class, and I really hope that you're going to have a good evening further. Goodbye.